Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something most of us, well, try pretty hard to avoid.
Yeah.
Failure. But we're looking at it differently, not just as, something that happens by accident, but maybe as a source of insight, even creativity.
Exactly. And we've got some really fascinating, almost polar opposite sources to explore this. On one hand, there's the incredibly unique, you could say, eccentric philosophy of the Scottish artist Ivor Cutler.
Ah, the poet and songwriter, very distinctive. And on the other hand, a collection of pretty serious academic work from the book Failureists. It actually proposes a whole field of critical failure studies.
Yeah, quite the contrast. So our mission today is really to see if we can bring these two viewpoints into dialogue. We want to connect that personal, maybe whimsical, individual failure like Cutler's with the idea of collective, maybe even necessary failure. The kind needed to critique really big systemic problems in society, in academia, even technology.
Okay, so the goal is to figure out how embracing imperfection, this whole failurism idea, might actually help us navigate, well, everything. Information overload, institutional pressures, you name it.
That's the plan. How does accepting failure give you an edge?
Right. So let's start with the man who seemed to make nonconformity an art form, Ivor Cutler. Now, some people might vaguely remember him from that Beatles film, Magical Mystery Tour. He played Buster Bloodvessel. Very strange character.
Oh, definitely memorable, even in a small role. But he was so much more. Famous for the plus fours, the fez, yeah. And the stage presence that was deliberately odd. Unsettling, even.
He actually leaned into that, didn't he? He said his humor was meant to produce unsettling feelings, to relieve fear. He called himself a serious poet in the mantle of a funny man.
Which fits perfectly with his personal philosophy, that core idea, imperfection is an end. Perfection is only an aim. It wasn't just a catchy phrase. It drove his resistance to conformity.
And that resistance came from experience, right? His background wasn't easy. Jewish family facing anti-Semitic bullying, then getting kicked out of the RAF for dreaminess.
Exactly. That dreaminess label is telling. He chose not to fit the mold. And we found this amazing unpublished facts interview he did once that just perfectly captures his cosmic view of things.
Oh, the facts interview. Some of those lines are incredible. It shows it wasn't just eccentricity. It was almost tactical alienation.
Tactical is a good word for it. Like when he declared he was a spore from outer space, landed on the wrong planet, that's not just being funny. It's him saying, I operate outside your rules.
Totally. And asked for his location, not an address, but on the crust of a ball, along with a bunch of people determined on self-destruction.
Wow. Paints a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, and his childhood in 5 words. Dealing with arbitrary petit bourgeois nonsense. Just cuts right through it.
And this is where his actions, his art, start to look less like simple failure and more like that tactical resistance we mentioned. Think about those sticky labels he used to hand out.
Oh yeah, the ones with messages like, befriend a bacterium.
Or, to remove this label, take it off. It's
Yeah.
this deliberate short-circuiting of expectation. He wanted to be never knowingly understood. It's a way of failing at being easily categorized.
Right. And his constant battle against noise makes sense in that context too. Joining the Noise Abatement Society, complaining hotels were too loud, even talking to his harmonium.
It's all part of choosing to fail at being the normal, accommodating performer or person. He was actively resisting the expected social static.
So that deliberate choice to fail at conformity, it feels like a really neat bridge into the more academic side of this, the critical failure studies.
It really does. We shift from Cutler's very personal artistic refusal to a broader academic argument. What if failure isn't just an individual thing, but a necessary tool for critiquing the systems themselves?
Okay, but when academics start talking about failure, does it just become another way to be critical without offering solutions? What's the actual point of critical failure studies?
Well, the core idea is to push back hard against this dominant sort of neoliberal obsession with constant productivity, constant growth, constant success. Instead of just seeing failure as something to fix or hide, this field looks at it as a, quote, generative space for recalibration.
A generative space.
Yeah, or a method of disciplined undisciplining. It forces us and institutions to ask, who actually defines success? And who pays the price for that definition?
That immediately brings up something crucial, especially in creative fields. Grace McQuilton talks about the privilege of failure.
Absolutely critical point.
Because you have to ask who actually gets the chance to fail. If you don't have resources, a safety net. Failure isn't some interesting learning opportunity, it's potentially devastating.
Right. So the ability to take big risks, to potentially fail spectacularly but then recover, that's often a marker of privilege.
We see this tension play out in real projects. The book mentions two examples from curation. One was this piece called The Remote-Controlled Terrorist Coffin.
Sounds provocative.
Highly. It had all these ambitious mechanical parts, a cannon, nitrous oxide, but obviously, for safety, they had to be disabled.
So it had to fail at its full potential.
Exactly. And that necessary failure, dialing back the risk, apparently caused real emotional strain for the tech staff who'd poured energy into making the ambitious version work.
Interesting. Failure having a human cost, even when it's the right decision.
Then compare that to another project, the Magic Tent. Here, the ambition was scale hand dyeing 600 meters of silk.
Wow, that's huge.
Almost impossible given the actual staff capacity. So people were pushed way beyond reasonable limits. It highlights the tension between the grand artistic vision and the human reality of making it happen. Failure looms when capacity is ignored.
So both examples show that risk and potential failure aren't abstract. They have real consequences for the people involved.
Which leads back to this idea of failure as resistance. If institutions demand constant success, as Kuhn and Halberstam argue,
Then choosing to fail, or even just acknowledging failure, can be a tactic, a way to push back against those demands. If success in our society often means accumulating wealth in very specific ways,
then failing at that specific game might be a way to escape what they call punishing norms.
precisely, it opens up space for different kinds of value, different kinds of knowledge.
And thinking about things never quite reaching that perfect state, that connects to another idea from the book, the concept of final drafts.
Right, from Wilkins and Burroughs. They argue that basically everything creative texts, art, buildings, are really just creatively incomplete projects. They're all, in a sense, final drafts.
I like that framing. It takes the pressure off perfection.
It does. It encourages what they call construction as research. You're not trying to hide the messy bits, the phrase. You're actively using those unfinished edges to find new directions, to innovate.
Okay, so let's take this attitude, embracing the phrase, seeing value in imperfection, and apply it. How does it play out in really high-stakes situations? The book looks at care, the climate crisis, our digital lives.
Yeah, let's start with care. There's a powerful study discussed about creative workers, mostly women, trying to work and care from home during Melbourne's incredibly long lockdowns. We're talking 260 days.
Wow. And the study found?
Pretty stark findings. It highlighted worsening gender inequality, with women bearing the brunt of unpaid care work. This led to what many described as a complete erasure of their own creative lives and identities.
That sounds incredibly tough. You mentioned an internalized sense of failure.
Deeply internalized. One participant said, and this is a direct quote, "I totally failed at the PhD. I had no mental space, no emotional space. It just became this big black abyss."
That's brutal. Just completely overwhelmed by impossible demands.
Totally. But interestingly, humor emerged as a coping mechanism. Like one participant G, shared this ironic to-do list she'd made.
Oh, what was on it?
It detailed this absurdly complicated process for logging into multiple work systems, passwords, authenticators, and then immediately listed the next task as, answer this question, mum.
Huh. Yeah, that captures the impossible juggling act perfectly, doesn't it? The system itself is setting you up to fail.
Exactly. The humor highlights the breakdown, the failure inherent in the demands being placed on people.
That feeling of systemic impossibility, it just gets magnified immensely when we turn to the climate crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Jen Ray and Claire G. Coleman frame the climate crisis itself as the ultimate failure of colonialism and capitalism. That's a heavy statement.
It is. And their proposed response, reworlding, explicitly uses failure. They call it essential fodder for navigating risk, for breaking away from what they call maladaptive ways of engaging with the crisis.
That banner they use really says it all. Unfuck your world. It's blunt about the scale of failure and the need for radical change.
But dealing with failure on that scale, it brings up immense grief, doesn't it? The sources talk about ecological grief.
Yeah, it's a specific kind of grief. It's hard to mourn losses that are ongoing, uncertain, caused by our own actions, rather than something finite and past. It's sometimes called pre-solastalgic grief, grieving the future loss of a place you still inhabit.
That constant tension.
Yeah.
Like the example given from Fogeltofta in Sweden.
Right, the dilemma. They need to mine vanadium there for green energy tech, like batteries. But doing so would devastate the local landscape.
It's an unavoidable failure point, isn't it? We have to choose which places become sacrifice zones, these shadow places, to fuel energy consumption elsewhere. There's no clean win.
Exactly. You're forced to confront the failure inherent in the choice. And we see a similar dynamic, and you need to confront built-in failure when we look at our digital lives.
Also,
And Net Markham brings up this provocative idea, the machine as a kind of psychopath.
okay, explain that one.
Well, think about it. Digital tech operates without remorse, empathy, or an ethical conscience, right? It just executes code. Yet we increasingly rely on these systems for deeply human things, memory, relationships, connection.
Huh. That's an unsettling comparison.
It is. But Markham argues there's value in seeing digital media this way, seeing it as already failing, as glitchy, imperfect, inevitably outdated systems, rather than buying into the fantasy of total control and perfect function.
So stop expecting perfection from technology.
Yes, because when you accept its imperfections, its failures, you actually see the system more clearly. The glitches, the crashes, the weirdnesses they reveal, the seams, the underlying structures, the human assumptions baked into the code. Failure becomes transparent.
Okay, let's pull these threads together. We started way over here with Ivor Cutler, this wonderfully eccentric individual refusing to conform.
His personal, almost joyful embrace of imperfection.
And we've moved through academic critiques, the privilege of failure, the pressures of care work, the overwhelming scale of the climate crisis, and even the nature of our digital tools.
And the connecting thread seems to be this. Recognizing failure, whether it's personal or systemic, isn't about giving up. It's about clarity. It's about seeing the limitations, the assumptions, the costs baked into the systems we operate within.
Whether it's an art project pushing boundaries, the impossible demands placed on carers, a global environmental strategy, or just your relationship with your smartphone.
Acknowledging the potential or even the inevitability of failure helps you, as Markham put it, see the system more clearly. And that clarity, that seeing things as they are, imperfections and all, is what builds resilience. It's what creates the space for genuine change.
So for our final thought today, think about Albert Camus and Sisyphus, the guy doomed to push a boulder uphill forever, only for it to roll back down. Camus said Sisyphus finds freedom, even happiness, precisely when he accepts the absurdity, the meaninglessness of the task. The value isn't in reaching the top, it's in the struggle itself.
The conscious recognition of the situation.
Right. So given the systems we've talked about today, systems that often seem designed to produce failure or demand impossible successes, what might it mean for you, personally, to fail at believing and wanting that prescribed, mandated success? What if you recognize the real value, the radical potential, lies simply in the attempt, in the trying, in the imperfect process itself?
Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.